Hi, it's Matt Thomas here from King & Eek, and I'm here at Sonic Academy, and I'm also here with this fine little beast, which is a Roli Seaboard Block, which I'm going to say is probably the best money I've spent on music kit myself. Several years. Bold claim, because I do like music kit. But speaking as humble brag coming up, somebody with a CS80. Yes, settle down in the cheap seats. Yeah, this has made me, I've said for ages, CS80s, yeah, they're wonderful, but actually the main thing is the keyboard is incredible. This is better. This is a better keyboard. I'm not gonna even pull punches. Pure hyperbole. This is a CS80 killer. I love it with a passion. I'm gonna look at why, how it works, give you a quick overview, but in brief, if you're any kind of soundtrack or sync kind of guy, games music, if you're a sound designer, or if you just enjoy more kind of expressive electronic music, if you enjoy playing rather than programming, this is your boy. Okay, so the first thing is, how is the Roli to use? How does it work? How does it feel? That's kind of the most important thing with a controller. It's nice to have all these ideas going, but if it doesn't actually play well, then it's not going to fly. First thing is that the Roli doesn't have a keyboard. It has what are called a series of key waves. You can see that there is the outline of a typical keyboard there, sharps and naturals. However, they don't move. When I press a finger onto the Seaboard, it's a kind of a touch-sensitive surface with some give in it. And so as soon as I make contact, the note sounds. And I can press harder, and it's a sort of like a soft, almost like a kind of like a firm jelly underneath these things that gives way as you press it. And you can hear it's making the note louder there. But there's no hinge mechanism, nothing's moving here. This is just a big press surface. And the key thing to take away is that, as well as the area that's marked off with the notes, the entire surface is actually playable. So if, for example, there's an F here, I can actually play here. Now, different things happen to the sound, but in terms of pitch, it's all an F. So the entire surface is playable. So Roli referred to the Seaboard as having 5 dimensions of control. What are those 5 dimensions? Well, they are strike, press, slide, glide, and lift. Now, strike is how hard I hit the key. So in that respect, it's kind of like velocity we've encountered on MIDI. And next is press. Once I've played a note, I can apply extra pressure. That again, similar to aftertouch in MIDI, so far so familiar. Now we have what is called slide. So once I've played a note, I can move my finger up and down that key wave. And you can hear, in this case, it's opening and closing the filter. That's not a fixed assignment. What happens when I do any of these things is a controller signal is generated. What that does is up to you in the software. You can set up the patch to respond to each of these movements in any way you particularly choose. In this case, they've chosen to make the slide, open and close, a cutoff. So in effect, each key is also a fader. Then we've got glide. Now, you'll obviously have used a pitch bend, I'm assuming, on your synths in the past. Possibly you've used a ribbon controller. In that respect, a ribbon controller is what glide is closest to, because I can play a note and glide it onto another part of the surface. And finally, we have lift, which is how fast I take my finger off the key. So, and you can hear in this case, as I do a fast lift, it triggers an extra tail on the note, which isn't there if I do a slow release. So that's our 5D. We've got strike, press, slide, glide, and lift. So you might be thinking, yeah, well, Matt, that is kind of groovy, but you know what? I've got a pitch bend, so I can do that with my pitch bend, can't I? And I've got a keyboard that does velocity, and I've got a keyboard that does aftertouch, and I guess I can just map a fader. You can. That's great, but here's the thing. It takes 2 hands. What's different with this thing is it's all done with a single hand. Well, that means, of course, I can use 2 hands on here, can't I? And this is where the Seaboard becomes really exciting, because every single one of these controls is specific to every one of these fingers. So for example, I can play a chord of just 2 notes. And if I want to bring out the top F, I can do that, or I can bring out the bottom. If I want to increase the filter of the low F, or the top F, it's completely independent. If I want to slide one of these parts, That has no effect on the low F. And simultaneously I can release one fast and one slowly, and they respond differently. So every single finger you put on this keyboard is its own controller, and that's why this thing is basically fantastic. So you might be thinking, okay, that's all very cool, I'm very impressed technically, but musically, Matt, that was just you waggling around a sawtooth, and it wasn't that exciting. No, it wasn't, because what I was doing was showing you an initialized patch there, just bare, boring, kind of least amount of work possible to get the 5D control into a sound. What you get when you buy the Roli is a whole bunch of presets that have been really finely crafted to take advantage of the 5D, things like this. Okay, so what do I like about the Roli Seaboard, apart from the playability, obviously? Well, first up, it's very compact. It's very light, it's very small, you'll fit this in a backpack, no problem. Secondly, it can be run via a wired or a wireless connection. It's Bluetooth, actually, so you can hook it up via Bluetooth, and then you can connect to mobile apps on your phone. Obviously, it speaks to applications on your laptop, DAW, soft synths, etc. It's a little on the small side, if I'm going to talk about what occasionally cramps me up. It's not so much the size of the keys, I'm fine with that, but the fact there's only 2 octaves. There is a solution to that as long as you've got the funds. Now, the Seaboards are typically meant to be about 300 quid, but there's often offers on. You can find them for about 200, 250 pounds. If you've got the money to spare, and I know it's not buttons, but if you've got it to spare, you can just simply buy a second one. You go, okay, that's fine, Matt, and one for each hand. Well, not really. They actually link together, and I'll show you now. So, second Seaboard, ta-da! So yeah, I can simply move this guy along, bring in his friend here, and on the end there are these little connectors. I'm not sure if you can see those shining now. Those little connectors there are on the end of each one of the blocks. And I can just put them side by side, and you might notice it's kind of jumped together because they're magnetic. And if you look over on the dashboard, straight away they're paired up. So now we've got 2 blocks together, and that's literally all the setup. If I now bring up a patch, it's ready to go straight away. The only limitation is that while every single one of the notes is independent, as before, I can't slide across this connection. Other than that, I can play across the divide as if it was a single surface. So you can try out the Seaboard idea with a single block, and if you think that actually, yeah, this is for me, I do find that having the 4 octaves means, of course, you have a far more playable surface and you can add these bits as required. So far so good, and you're thinking, okay, I'm obviously going to go and buy one of these now. The second I have a few £100 sitting in my pocket doing nothing, Matt, this is what I'm going to go and buy. Well, I've got to be honest, there is a small issue I have with them, which I must raise before I send you scurrying out to the shops. MPE is a wonderful technology. However, while it's already now pushing a decade old in some cases, it started out quite obscure, and even recently it's only just starting to get mainstream acceptance. And as such, it's now supported in a number of DAWs such as Logic, Cubase, etc. However, it's not supported in Ableton. I know a number of people on here obviously are Ableton users, myself included. There are ways of using the Rolis with Ableton, however, it's a right fiddle and involves setting up about 16 MIDI tracks, and depending on the sort of soft synth you want to use, possibly having up to like 15 or 16 instances of that synth just to create a single sound. This is cumbersome. The reason for this is that every single note I play has its own controllers, its own pressure, its own glide, its own slide, etc. And the way this is handled in an MPE synth is that each one of them is effectively a separate channel of a multi-timbral synth. If you've not encountered multi-timbral synths before, they were quite big back in the days of hardware because you wanted to get as much out of a box you'd spent £1,000 on as possible. So they'd allow you to play more than one sound from a single instrument, and to do that you assign different sounds to different MIDI channels. Now, of course, we just pull up different soft synths all day long on separate tracks, but in the days of multi-timbral synths, that was how it was done. So MPE relies on your soft synths being multi-timbral, and so effectively they're just putting a copy of the same sound on each one of those channels. So as I play 6 notes on the keyboard, there are 6 separate voicings, and each one can get its own pitch bend, its own volume, its own pressure, and so on. Now, in Ableton, that doesn't exist, so you've got to actually create it yourself, making multiple MIDI channels, loading up multiple soft synths. It is a drag. I'm not going to show you all the details here. We'll come back and do like a full look at the MPE stuff if you guys are enjoying this quick look. We'll come and do a real sort of burrow deep down into the Roli because it's fantastic, and the software that comes with it is well worth exploring. But I would be a bit remiss if I didn't mention now that it is a tricky one to work with in Ableton. Beyond that, even on the DAWs that it works really well with, like Logic and Cubase, etc., this generates a lot of controller data. Like if I do this now, okay, I played 5 notes there, so each one of those notes has generated its own separate controller information. And if I press in, slide, glide, then we could be talking about 3 or 4 different controllers per note. You can easily have 20 channels of controller information or more, so it must be said the Roli is a thing to perform on. Yeah, you can go and edit it, and yes, you can tweak it, and that's great, but you're going to need to be a little more patient if you're going to come into this thing and start trying to rewrite all the work you've done. Picking up the odd wrong note or pulling back the odd bit of pressure, yeah, that's absolutely no problem. But you're going to need to accept the fact that this is for playing, not just sort of offline programming. That's the whole beauty of it. If you want to offline program, you've got a mouse. Draw this stuff in yourself. If you want to get something really organic going on with all your fingers of your hands, get one of these. So that was the Roli Seaboard Block. If you like the look of that, go beg, borrow or buy one. They are worth spending some time with. A bit of a hard thing to demo in just 5 minutes. Try and get a bit of quality time on one of these things and see if it will fit into your workflow. More likely that you can adapt your workflow to fit it. There's no point having such an ace piece of gear if you're not prepared to accommodate what it can do. If you've enjoyed this, there's a lot more to MPE and the Roli gear than we've got into here, particularly programming the sounds. I mean, things like, we currently use LFOs and envelopes and stuff to shape our sounds. Well, there's no need for them if, of course, you've got 5D controls. You shape the sounds with your hand. But that takes a whole lot of different programming, so we could look at some of that if you're interested, and we'll only know if you let us know. So if you enjoyed this, do the feedbacky stuff, do the comments, send the love, and we might come back and have a mess one.
Thanks everybody for watching, commenting and indeed liking. We really do appreciate all the support we get here on our Sonic Academy YouTube channel. So if you found this video super useful, please, we'd love you to hit the subscribe button. We update the YouTube channel every week with new content, and if you want to watch some more relevant content, just click on the videos beside me.